there. I'll reset the room. Hello, everyone. Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert. And I am live on Clubhouse. And hopefully we'll have a couple of people join me. Otherwise, you'll look at me the entire time. What I love doing is if you take a look, for those who are seeing this, I've got an iPad. That's where the sound comes from for the actual show. For those who are, if you're curious and want to do something like this yourself, I have StreamYard. And so the sound's coming from the iPad onto my microphone. The conversation then is streamed on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. So it's a nice way to tie together 5 different platforms. Specifically, the conversation is around leaders living their values, and in this particular case, in growing influence. And so it's very interesting in growing influence. What does that really mean? And I think I want to start with the definition of a thought leader. Okay, so what's interesting about thought leadership is we often think about, in the marketing cookie cutter approach that we see, we often think of Brigadier. Nice to see you. And thanks for recrafting yourself from hi Mike to hi Mitchell. The thought leadership, when we think about this marketing cookie cutter approach, we think, wait, we need to be a thought leader. We need to change opinions around the world. Now, for some of us, that's true. For many of us, if you take a look at who you serve, you take a look at the audience that you play in, the really interesting thing is the audience needs to be the size of who you actually serve. Right. So in terms of being a thought leader, who is the audience that you serve? For some people, the audience may be, I'll tell you, in my family, the thought leader is my wife. Right. And so she's the person we listen to, and her family and her extended, or our family and our extended family, is where she's the thought leader, and she doesn't need to go beyond that. So in terms of who you serve, what is the audience? What is the breadth of the audience that you serve and focus on? Hey, Byron, thanks for coming here. Let us know if you want to be put up into the speaker, or if you're in a quiet enough location this round. And so you are serving a smaller number of people. Here's the cool part. It is a whole lot easier to grow your influence because you know who your targets are. One of the problems with social media is in many cases, you might be shouting out to an audience that may or may not see you. I've got, close to 5,000 people that I'm connected to on Facebook, and many people have lots of connections. So I just don't see all the things people post, where my family members have a whole lot less. And so, when the family posts to each other, they get to see all of each other's pictures and photos and influence who they are and what they're thinking and what they're doing. And for me, I don't get influenced by those unless I randomly hit. Okay, so let's go back to what is influence. Influence is the opportunity to influence the thoughts of those that are surrounding you. And we have, once again, this concept called an influencer. Now, influencers typically are looked at as people who are influencing large mass numbers of people. Once again, if the target audience is 10 or 100 or 1,000, the ability to influence a larger percentage of those numbers become relatively high. And so I just would like to have people think about, when you think about being credible, you want to think about first, who is your audience? And if your audience is a relatively smaller size, then your opportunity to influence that audience becomes a whole lot easier. And I think we often think about, well, I want to influence the world, and then we're not happy when we don't influence the world. And the thing is, your audience may be much smaller, so start with a very focused set that would make sense for you to influence. Byron, do you want to introduce yourself and tell me what you're thinking about?
I was here for moral support, Mitchell, but yeah, you know me. I'm just a guy that never stops. But yeah, I was just enjoying some time at the pups and thought I'd jump in because the entertainment value with the pups goes only so far when it comes to learning. So yeah, but Mitchell, like whenever I see you on here, there's not a time that I don't want to join. I'll just leave it at that. So I appreciate it.
Oh, you are so kind. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Rosa, good to see you coming in. I think what happens, it in a room like this, and Byron, I so appreciate, is a lot of the energy I get is based on the feedback that I'm getting from various social media platforms, right? So whether it's here, ask the right questions. I know, Adrian, you happen to be in a room that might be noisy, but feel free to jump on and ask questions or give thoughts. Otherwise, I could definitely talk about some things that are happening. I have lots of ideas, but I often don't want to. I don't want to be the person who just takes the entire room. So let me see. If there's any questions, incremental questions?
I'm okay now, Mitchell. If you want to, I'd like to respond to your first one. No,
awesome.
I closed myself. We had a lot of damage here. Florida's been demolished. It's very sad. And I'm in Daytona Beach, so we're okay. But most of my friends and neighbors are not. So,
I'm so glad you're okay.
Thank you. Okay. I'm Adrian Barker, by the way, and as you may guess, I live in Daytona Beach. So I'm glad to be here. I love supporting Mitchell. Mitchell, I guess it's one of those things where I don't think of, right? Like I don't think about like being credible to my audience. I just think it's like the last thing on my mind. And I also forget sometimes about the influence. And once in a while, someone will say, "Oh, I saw this," or on Clubhouse. When I was starting on Clubhouse over a year and a half ago, I talked about SCORE all the time, the nonprofit I'm so proud to be heavily involved with, and because we love business. So I'm a certified business mentor and also the chapter chair for our local 2 counties, actually, so a large area. And then I forget, like, so you go up on stage, you talk about what you love, you talk about your passion. Being credible or being an influencer is really, in my mind, never in the back of my mind until afterwards when someone will say, "Adrian, thank you, I became a mentor," or "Thank you, I am now working with SCORE and they're helping me with my business," or "Hey, you wrote about this delicious meal and I ordered it from the restaurant," like whatever it may be. I don't think about it, but it's interesting that we are influencers, and even if you only have 50 followers, you can still influence one of those followers. And it may just be that day you woke up and said, "It's so sunny out, I got to remind myself to put on my suntan lotion to protect my skin," and someone else wakes up and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad that Mitchell wrote that about suntan lotion. I'll wear it too." So I think I always talk about like modeling the correct behavior, and I think that goes for social media too. You model the correct behavior, and you do things sometimes that you may not think of the end that you're trying to influence, but it will happen. So I think it's important for all of us to be credible. Just be on your best behavior. Like my mama said, "Are you on your best behavior today, Adrian?" "Yes, I am." So I'm Adrian, throwing up the
mic. Adrian, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, it's really it is really interesting. And by the way, I agree with you. I don't wake up in the morning thinking I'm going to be any more incrementally credible or any more incrementally influencing. What I do is I think about what influenced me, like who touched me, what's going on, what's valuable. There is something that happened yesterday that I absolutely want to share with you, and I will. What I do is I think about just living me in the way I live a credible life. And I think the demonstration of that, I think that's one of the benefits that does come out of the fact that we all have a microphone that we're walking around with, that we all have a camera walking around with. I think the demonstration of that makes it significantly easier for those who want to be influenced, for those who want to enjoy, for those who want to influence, is you're basically showing your life and showing up. And so I want to share for those who can see my channels, whether it's, once again, we stream on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And one of the guys I interviewed yesterday, I have a show called Leaders Living Their Values. And that's the same name of this show. That's part of my part of the way I respond to who I serve, how I show other people, is focusing on being there for others and helping leaders basically live their values out loud. Because if you live your values out loud, you're, particularly if those values are credible, you're showing up credible. Those people want to follow you. They see your servant leadership. They see your desire to have the intent and commitment to do the right thing for others. And so one of the guys I interview is a guy by the name of Peter Stropel. So Peter is an interview that I did yesterday. So it's on the same channels. And this is a guy who has probably one of the largest connections to corporate, and we'll just say corporate around the world, people on the planet. He's done many things in life. He is an incredible servant leader. And so I had a half hour with him yesterday, and it is a well worthwhile interview to watch. And one of the things he does, and I believing I'm going to be adopting this myself, is when he introduces you to somebody, because he actually, we'll start with the thing at the end. So my typical interviews, I have a question up front, a question at the end. The question up front is, who are you? So I let people just talk about themselves. Question at the end, how do people reach out to you? The rest is organic, based on how the conversation goes. And at the end, I was like, how is it that Peter, we hadn't talked about it ahead of time, how is it that Peter would want to have other people reach out to him? And before I even asked the question, I started thinking about, well, what would I say about him? And it turned out he said exactly what I thought. And I just found that really fascinating. So I said, Peter, what is the best way for people to reach out to you? And he says, well, if you're watching or listening to this and you're on Mitchell's channel, why don't you connect out to Mitchell and he'll make a decision of whether or not he should introduce you to me. And I just found the level of trust, the power of that, as being so amazingly cool. And what happens when you introduce, when Peter introduces me to somebody else, he'll send a phone number. He'll have me call. When I do call that other person, the magic words I get to say is, Peter says he loves you. And so when he answered that question at the end, he goes, Mitchell, when you introduce somebody to me, just say Mitchell says he loves you. And all of a sudden it hit me that that's how I'm going to continue to grow what I do as well when I introduce two people, is just to have that. And I think what a cool way to follow through with people. And for me, I'm going to be as selective as he is when I could see that two parties need to be able to talk to each other. But his influence on me in just a conversation, and I don't believe he was saying anything to encourage me to want to do that. He just said it and like, wow, transformation, something brand new. I was very excited about that. And I just want you to think about it for yourself. Imagine if when you introduce people, that the only time you introduce somebody is when you know there's either a good fit and you truly trust the person that you're introducing in such a good way, and that the introduction is simply that the person says your name and so says he loves you or she loves you. Like, what a cool, I just, it gives me chills just to think about, as someone who influences others, what better influence than to have something like that. Mohammed, hi, welcome to the table.
How you doing, beautiful souls? Hi, Mitchell.
Hey, do you have any thoughts on that? Is there a comment on overall, we're talking about influence, but were you around long enough I just saw you in there, so you may not have heard the whole story. I just thought you might be able to share your 2 cents.
Sorry, Mitchell. I came late. I haven't been around enough to gather some thoughts. Maybe give me a few minutes to gather some thoughts.
I got you. We'll come back to you on that. Thank you, Adrian.
Or Adrian, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Byron. Adrian.
I was just going to say that I think what you were saying was to receive love in the response of just that communication effort, and that's kind of a beautiful thought for when we look at our influence on top of that to the person expressing that, right? Is that kind of what I was getting?
Yeah, I think do you mind? I'm gonna say yes, but I'm gonna add to that a little bit. I think it's the influence with love, right? It's the fact that the best way I could think about it is giving an example that works is through the example of being a parent, right? You want your best for your children. You absolutely want your kids to be the best they can, and by the way, no matter what type of home somebody came from, whether there's a lot of money, little money, love is that fundamental formula, that fundamental ingredient that will allow a child to grow up in a place that they feel like they're cared for and supportive, and then continue doing that with others. And so what I was thinking about from the relationship perspective is, hopefully when you've heard or felt or seen even Adrian being in the room, you're feeling love because this is part of the room. If Byron, you said to me, "Hey Mitchell, I need to meet somebody, blah blah blah," and I thought of somebody to meet, if I started the introduction by asking you, Byron, to say to somebody else, "Mitchell says he loves you," and that person just immediately opened up their heart to listen to you, that's kind of what I mean. Is you just kind of you're initially starting a conversation from one of trust, of respect, of servant leadership.
I got it. All right. Okay. So this is what I always say in this love spectrum, is that you have to understand, love yourself, right? And when that happens, a miracle happens because you radiate love. And that's the response you get back, is that those connections are all based on that love that you radiate. And it's not a proactive kind of approach to realize that it comes back in love, but it's just something that you know within, and you genuinely hold, and you live it, and it radiates out of you. So that's kind of what I say on that love thing, because man, there is something to be said about how that influences, and it goes to say the recognized true self-love radiates on its own and brings love to you. That's that whole law of attraction kind of mindset. But I think that's what it takes, is to really hold steady to that, which encompasses all those things that you talk about, Mitchell, the credibility, the value structures, like all that. And that's what comes in alignment, and it just radiates. And there's a lot of energy. Like, we could go on for days about how true it is, even in our science world. But the reality is that's the awareness that I pick up when I think of love. It's that. So that's kind of how I would summarize it, buddy.
Yeah, that's very tasty. I want to do a shout out to some of the folks that are on social media. But before I do that, Bella, did you have a strong opinion on this particular topic? And welcome.
Thank you very much, Mitchell, Andrea, and Baron. I just finished the room, so I just thought I was going to come in and just relax and get some new ideas because your room has been very inspiring. Actually, I'm going to come from a place of emotion. And I put some charts up on my Instagram account. And love, in the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins, he talks about he divides the worlds up into three: the 3D world, the 4D world, and the 5D world, which love is in. Now, just give an example. Because Instagram, you can't do Instagram, Clubhouse, you can't do PowerPoint. And please feel free to look on my Instagram account for details. And you don't have to follow me; it's there, as an act of service. In the 3D world, the bottom is this. Let me just give one: being fearful. With it, in the terms of divine intelligence, it's a punitive, something punitive has happened. And your life view is frightening. Bear with me, I'm going to come to love. And the level of your emotion is fear and anxiety, and the process is withdrawal. So when you get to the 4D world, where most leaders like to think they are, with education and etc., we have enabling. I'm just using one of the points, which is the high intelligence view of looking at things. But the live view is doing things at a satisfactory level. The level is neutrality, and trust is a very important part. The emotional trust and the process release. Now, when we get to the 5D world, where it's actually servant leadership or leadership leading by love, the emotion is reverence, and the process is revelation. So I was listening to you speak about revelation in your interactions and what you should do, because you're in the 5D world, the world of the soul. The 4D world, by the way, is the world of the mind, the world of the soul. And that is where the magic happens, because you're connecting with the essence of the individual. As I said, I don't want to take up the stage, but the 3 posts which I posted today, please have a look. It's more in detail of what I'm trying to say. So that's where I think leadership is needed. The 5D world, moving us from the 3D world, the 4D world by education and professional experience, into this 5D world where the magic happens and we're more connected. I'm Bella, and I'm complete.
Thank you, Bella. I love that. That was awesome. I will look at your Instagram and follow through on that. And thank you for the offer. Make sure if you don't mind, put that, if you could put it in chat, might make it easier here, and I'll try to share it in chat in the other platforms as well. I want to shout out to Marianne Cintron. She says she's enjoying the show on LinkedIn. Appreciate that. Brigadier Social Boston, great to have you here. He had said leaders communicate to inspire action. That makes them influencers. And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. And now let's go back to what Bella just said. What one of my friends said, and we've heard Lucas Root on the show before. One of the things that he thinks about, and one of the things that he says, so Bella, this is another way of looking at your 3D, 4D, 5D world. What he says is, does the world happen to you? does the world happen for you? Does the world happen by you? Or does the world happen through you? And what I'm going to say is I believe that your definition of 5D is when then the world happens through you. Right? So when it happens to you, this is the victim mentality. Stuff happens, you don't know what to do with it. Things are negative, good things happen, bad things happen. It just happens to you. When it happens by you, I am going to make a bold statement. I think a lot of people who call themselves thought leaders, who call themselves influencers, are people who are doing the by you. It's all about them. It's all about them just forcing an opinion, forcing a thought, forcing an action. And I think I like at least the for you and through you. The for you is recognizing that when things happen, good or bad, it's an opportunity for you. It's an opportunity for you to, if it's good, obviously, to benefit and appreciate, maybe just go out and send love. If it's potentially bad, now interesting definition of good and bad. We haven't done that yet. But if it's bad, then the question is, what have you learned? What have you grown? What did you do potentially to cause that? Or if you didn't do anything, how can you learn and how can you help those around you? How can you be a servant leader for those that because you've done that? And the interesting part, so that's kind of the for you. The through you becomes very interesting. And Bella, that's what I was feeling when you were speaking. It's kind of the through you is it takes into consideration that stuff is happening, that you have an overarching, I think, Adrian, this is along the lines of what you had said before. You have this overarching focus on being this human that's a servant leader. You have this overarching focus on allowing other people to benefit from the things you do. You just show up and you be yourself. You just show up and be credible. And then when things happen, you push or you engage or you just let serendipity take their cause, their focus. And when things happen through you, I believe that's also going back to what I said at the beginning when I said Peter said he loves you or Mitchell says he loves you. When you're connecting to people, you're letting things happen through you because you're getting out of the way and you're letting two forces come together. And so that's that's a different way, Bella, of me interpreting what you said, which I thought was very cool. So great focus. Thank you. Hey, we have Dr. Laura in the house. Hi, Dr. Laura.
Hey, how you doing? What's up? I'm going to try to get on a video in just a minute, but I beg your pardon for being so terribly late. I'm so glad to be here. Adrian, I adore you. She's in my heart more so than she was even a week ago. And Byron, you're amazing. Mohammed, you're always available. Bella, such insight. And Victor, I don't think I know you. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm following you now. I believe that I've seen you in rooms before. We've been in rooms. I believe we've spoken, and it's a pleasure to share space with you. And we have Nara and also Rosa, Marco, Ted, Lorena, and Ara. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Laura. Now here's the cool part, right? Laura did apologize for being late, and she knew she was coming late and she let me know like 10 minutes before the show. Right? To me, it's always interesting to me because I think being credible, part of it, one of the 10 values of being credible is showing respect. And what is respect? Respect is what Dr. Laura did today. 10 minutes before the show, it's like, oh, hey, I'm going to be late. Okay. These things happen. Life happens, right? And when life happens, the question becomes, how do you address it? And do you show respect for those around you? And I find it fascinating. I'll share one more thing on influence. Right. So when one of the things I did, and so how I got to be this person at the moment, there's a lot of life experiences, but the one that really hit it for me was that PhD I got in the School of Hard Knocks by interviewing 500 thought leaders on credibility. And what happened at first is I didn't know all the things I was going to keep track of in the first, 3, 4, 5 interviews. And here's what was interesting. I think in those first 3, 4, 5 interviews, we had one person no show. We had 2 or 3 people come late. We had another person or two not come prepared at all. We couldn't do the interview because they weren't ready. And I realized, I need to first, if the world's going to be happening not to me, right? As an interviewer, I could get mad about that. But if the world's going to be happening for me, so it helped me come up with the structure and eventually happen through me. What was really interesting is I started keeping track. And one of the things I recognized is I ended up defining for a live show when late was. Right. So this is just for live shows, not necessarily for interviews or for conversations when you have a Zoom call. But for live shows, coming within 3 minutes of the start time, that's now considered late. Okay. I normally like to come 10 minutes early. And so the scary part is 500 people out of 500 people, 23% came late, came within 3 minutes. Right. And to make it worse, 4% came after the start of their live show. So 20 people out of 500 came after the live show. So imagine this: you're being interviewed by the global credibility expert on your credibility, and you think it's credible to come after the start time to your show. Like, duh. And so, Laura, I see you. Yay. Because all people is seen on at the moment. I'm gonna make you live. All people are seeing right now is Mitchell and Mitchell's reactions. Hi, Dr. Laura. Good to see you. You are officially live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Good to see you here.
Hi, yeah. I'm all like 10 minutes prior. I mean, I was late. See, what time did I text you?
No, it was 10 minutes prior, and you were late.
It was 21. It was 10:41. We started at 11.
Oh, 20 minutes, right? It was even better.
10:41. All right, my time. So we started at 11. So I 19 minutes prior, I let you know.
I have to tell you, for me, what all I needed to do was a mental shift. Like, Mitchell's going to be by himself. Let me text a couple of my friends, see if anyone could make it. I did that. And I'm like, okay, I just, but it gave me enough time versus live. Right. It was early enough. So and what it did most for me, cause I love you because you're amazing. Right. And what it did for me was it showed that you had respect. Right. And of course, the answer is, of course I do. But there's a difference between saying you have respect and demonstrating in your actions that you have respect. Right. So
it's true that. I mean, yeah. I mean, I just, I don't really want to treat others how they want to be treated. I should say that how I want to be treated. I treat others how I want to be treated for sure. That's the golden rule. It's the platinum rule. Treat others how they want to be treated. And you said prior to in other episodes where this is other rooms that we've had that you've indicated from your research as well. I mean, for me as a researcher, as a scientist, and then have the data, and then actually the theory that basing the world on the theory that you generated, I can either cultivate and empower that theory, I can nourish it, and or I can stifle it. And all I know is that from the way I work in the world is I would rather lift you up than take you down. And I'll show you that I can be respectful. How about that? I've been saying, I'll show you what it's going to be like. I'll show you what pain is. I'll show you what love is. I'll show you what kindness is. I'll show you what respect is.
Mm.
How about it? What is it? They're talking about mind shift. How about just being in the world in a way to lift up rather than to take down? Because if I'm growing, I'm going, and to take down is to stifle and to retract and to retreat. That's just not how I roll. So I don't know. Maybe that makes me special, but it's just makes this how I am.
It does make you special. Really. In a really positive way. So thank you.
Well, Mitchell.
Okay.
Dr. Laura.
You go.
Dr. Laura, you definitely live your values. You're such a lovely woman, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to just look you in the Zoom eyes. And I on my bucket list is to meet you one day. You're incredible. So I want to say one thing, I feel like sometimes I repeat myself. I do think age comes into this. There was a time, Mitchell, when I thought being late was what you're supposed to do, because I was modeling the behaviors of the people that I was working, and they were late. So I thought, well, as a manager, it shows you're late, you're popping in, and that's like, until I actually went to the Protocol School of Washington, and because I knew I was missing that kind of corporate etiquette. So I do giggle when someone's late and they know that, that we're going to talk about etiquette, or someone chides me for maybe using the word Dr. Laura, Dr. Cobb, oh, well, I just call her by her first name, and I'm like, I can't, or I still have that old fashioned, if you're older than me, you're a senior, I still, feel that when someone approaches you and you're sitting down, you should stand up. Like, I get all of that, and I model that behavior. But at 60 years old, I remember how I was. And so I don't judge anymore. I don't look at someone and say, oh my God, like, you didn't stand up. You didn't, you didn't greet me correctly, or you didn't, you just threw this business card in my hand and ran away. Like, whatever that looks like, I have learned now at the peak of this beautiful age of 60 that I don't judge. I feel bad sometimes that someone may not know that, and I hope that maybe they get the experience or the education to maybe learn proper etiquette. I mean, either like what Dr. Laura said, either the golden rule, right? We're learned it in kindergarten, or you don't, or it's just not in your blood, or you got a little evil running through your veins. Like, I don't really know, but I find. I don't make a little switch right now because there's no more I really can say about that. I want to say, we talk about like getting rid of toxic people, right, Dr. Laura? You may say, get rid of the toxic people in your life. Who are the people that bring you down? I question, what if we got rid of the people that we just couldn't trust anymore? What if you just literally, or is a toxic person a person you can't trust? Because the opposite of being that credible is kind of not being trustworthy. And that's where I'm like in myself right now going, I just can't trust you. I've tried. I'll give you like many, many times. And at that point, to me, trust also is like toxic in my mind. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm Adrian. Out.
I'm looking for a mic drop so I could send that to you. You just did so many cool things. That's a great, here, I got a boom. So that's a great, Adrian, that by itself is such a phenomenal conversation, is incorporating in the toxic people in your life, incorporating in those people who you can't trust. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that. That's really fascinating in terms of over time when I meet and interact with people, if promises are made and not delivered. Now, by the way, just to be clear, promises are made and not delivered all the time. The ego somehow talks us into saying that it's okay. And so there are definitely degrees of trust. Uh-oh, Dr. Laura is saying something. Like I'm like, uh-oh. So I I I I'll tell you a quick story on accountability. I did a survey on LinkedIn and I asked the wrong question, but I didn't know I asked the wrong question. The question was, are you self accountable? Do you not care about accountability? Do you have an accountability coach, or does a team or family member do it? Now, first of all, 3% of people said they don't care about accountability. These are people I don't want to know. I know, Dr. Laura, like what? Like, what is that, right? Now, 61% of people said they were accountable to themselves. 61%. And that's when I realized, when that number was so high, because that's not what I experienced, that's when I realized that I asked the wrong question. So I did another survey the following week. The survey was, by the way, much more properly asked. If you look at the partners in your network, how many of your partners actually say what they're going to do and do what they say? And only 10% said that they were filled and surrounded by people who had absolute accountability. So I'm just going to say, think about the 61% of people who say they're accountable, and that only, but when you're actually looking at those people who are in your network, only 10% are. There's a very interesting disconnect here. And what it comes down to is, I'm going to go back to ego. Sometimes people make promises and then somehow they justify in their minds why they can't make that promise. And so I don't know, this is an interesting conversation, but what it comes down to, what you just said, Adrian, that blew me away is, maybe we should just be thinking about having that inner circle with people who we love and trust. Having that if it's harder to trust you, maybe you just don't belong in the inner circle anymore. That's kind of a very fascinating thought process. Hey, Victor, you've been pretty good. Are you around to, Bella's going to talk, but Victor, you around to say hello and make a comment on that?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, Mitchell, Adrian, Dr. Laura. Yes, we met a few months ago in this room, wonderful room. Byron, Mohammed, hello. Bella, and all the others in the room. Well, this is a very interesting topic. And in my perspective, I have very much my school of thought has to do with the 4 agreements. And the first agreement is being impeccable with your word. And for me, what I got from this agreement is basically how we talk to ourselves and what kind of agreements we make with ourselves and others. And what I think it's important is to be true to ourselves, you know. And in terms of accountability, if we make the right agreements, and if we know that we cannot, you know, fulfill an agreement, I don't know if that's the right word in English, but if you cannot meet, you know, or fulfill an agreement, we need to be very mindful of what kind of agreements we do, especially with ourselves. Because I think that the source of personal power, you know, many people talk about personal power and personal development. Our personal power is connected with our capacity to meet our agreements, especially with ourselves. So in my case, for example, I didn't have an agreement to be here. And I had a room just before that. So as soon as I finished my other room, I came and joined you. And just to be present here and feel the energy of you guys, it's nourishing. But that's just my thought. And it's not that it's a sin if we don't meet an agreement or something. It's just a question of personal power, with ourselves, because in the end it's an agreement with my own self, and in the end is if I make an agreement with myself regarding a certain goal, the more I can commit and I can be truthful to my own agreements is what makes me more powerful. And of course, it can make you credible if you're accountable. That's fantastic. But I think it's more, and I say this in the context of a personal relationship with our own selves, more than, of course, it has an impact in the social world. But I think what is critical is basically first with our own self. Yeah. So that's my comment on this, Mitchell.
Victor, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a great reminder. I don't think you could be, actually, I know you can't be credible externally until you're credible internally. You can't, it's hard to show love to others until you show love to yourself. And, you know, we so forget that. we just so forget that. You know, the most basic definition that I've used for integrity, and I kind of am mixing. Dr. Laura was kind enough to remind me that I'm mixing accountability and integrity in terms of words. So let me tell you what integrity is to say what you do and do what you say. That to me is that most simplest, basic context of that word. And if you don't, Victor, what you just said is if you don't believe yourself, like you don't believe the words coming out of your mouth, you're not comfortable with yourself. How could you be comfortable with others? How could you share with others? How could you be of service to others? Yeah. I know this is basic, or at least it seems basic and fundamental, but I think I'll go back to what Adrian said earlier in the conversation. And that is, you just have to show up with you at the place you are at the time. And those people come and join you who are potentially influenced by you or with you or through you. They're influenced because they see who you are and how you're acting. And I mean, that's when we were young. We learned from our parents, right? Like we learned from those that were around us. And sometimes we learned good things and sometimes we didn't learn good things. And then many of us spent some of our lives unlearning the bad things we've learned. And I think it comes down to today and living in the moment, this moment. Who are you? And how can you best show up for yourself and for others? Right? So how can you best show up as a leader? By the way, even if you're only a leader of one, you're a leader. So how can you best show up as a leader of yourself and others? And it's by letting people see you. It's by having all the 10 elements that are associated with being credible. And I'll go through the list. Under being trustworthy, it's authenticity, external integrity, vulnerability, and being coachable. Under being known, it's being a servant leader, having the intent and commitment to do the right thing, and then also having internal integrity. And then under being liked, here's the cool part, sharing your stage, right? Which I try to do my best here in whatever platform people talk, and then also showing respect. And these are 10 elements that came out of the research of 500 people. And all I'm doing in this room is kind of living those values out loud. I'm hoping you're seeing that all that we're doing here is just living out loud the things that I've learned, and you guys are showing up that way, and you become an influencer for whatever audience is appropriate for you to influence when you just live your values out loud. Yeah, I'm going to say I'm complete with that thought at the moment. How we doing? Who has? Oh, Byron, I got something, Mitchell. Awesome, Byron, you're up, buddy.
Yeah, it was a little bit back when you were talking about that promise and how you keep them and things like that, and I was just thinking, that kind of integral part about me is beyond promise, because I think when when I use the word promise, I think there's some kind of ownership value there in relation to everything other than yourself or to yourself. Either way, but there isn't a balanced kind of mindset with promise. And I'm glad Dr. Laura brought in the integrity part, because I think that it's not a promise to ourself per se. That's like an externally projected kind of energy, but it's more of a natural energy within ourselves, so that promises can be formulated. Once you understand that integrity part, it becomes natural. And to add a little bit to that, Mitchell, that's that radiating energy that connects people of influence through community. And you brought up community very elegantly, right or wrong. And the unlearning process of how that works is, from my understanding, is understanding the lack of promise within self, but going into the natural ability to hold those promises externally. That integrity part. So, but thanks for letting me jump in there. It was a little further back, but I was holding on to it enough to hopefully articulate it. So
that was perfect. Loved it. That was awesome. Thank you. Who else is inspired at the moment?
Me.
Please.
No, I just love this conversation. I'm going to add another twist, though. There are times when I actually almost get a little annoyed with myself. Like, I'll find myself on Facebook and someone will ask a question. The next thing you know, because I want to help so badly. And this happened about a week ago where I was like, Adrian, like almost like a slap in my face. Like, I was like, stop it. Like, you can't help everyone. You can't stop what you're doing all the time. You'll never, like, is that the picture of not being successful? Is that my urge to help so many people ends up putting me down not the path to my own success, but to someone else's success. And like, how often can I do that, right? Like, how often? And I see this with SCORE, going back to SCORE again, where, I pause my mentoring. I just can't. Like, being a chapter chair is a lot of work, and I have to represent the community. I represent 2 communities. So, but I'll tell you what, I'm pausing my mentoring. But if you called me up and you're like, Adrian, please, blah, 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 guess who's saying yes? So I also think that, and this is what I really believe, like, you really have to have a life coach, because, and I don't have one, I'm looking at Dr. Laura, but like, because that's not good for me either, right? I also have to have a path, and I have to stay on the path, and I can't help everyone. And so that drive that I have to want to help people, yeah, that's a positive, and you can say all beautiful things about it, but you know what? It's also got some negative to it. And I say this too because everyone's like, you're so positive, Adrian, but that's a negative too, right? I'm so positive, but then if I was going to say, let me pick out your meal for you, you'd probably be like, yeah, no, that's okay. I'll pick out my own meal, because I probably would pick out something that you probably wouldn't like, because I like everything. So I do think that with everything that we talk about, there is that balance. And that's the balance to me sometimes is, and so I wouldn't want someone to look and say, well, Adrian's not, Adrian said no to mentoring. And honestly, I can't say no to mentoring, because when you call me up and you ask me, of course I want to. During this conversation, I have someone just wrote to me and say, hey, can you help me to go through shipping in the promotional products industry? So like, I'm out there and I love that, but it's not always, roses and beautiful gardens. Sometimes, I myself can go down the weeded path, and I'm not sure I like that all the time. So I've got to learn. So I think we got to look at ourselves and really learn where our boundaries are when it comes to this. And even when it comes to, there should be no boundaries on credibility. But I think I always reflect back to myself, because I don't really look at other people and kind of judge and see what they're doing. But with myself, I have to like reel myself back a little bit. That's it. I'm complete. Throwing up the mic or throwing it down, whatever you like.
Can I speak on that for you for a second?
Stop it. Just stop it. You got it. You're amazing.
I hear you preach. Oh my gosh. So I'm totally down with that. You said everything. And how well is that working for you? Pleaser ad nauseum, and it irritates the muck out of me. I'm very sensitive to time right now. Out of respect, I'm so sensitive to that I'm going to stifle my comments, only because haters hate. And the hardest thing about it is that when I myself, and I use that strong liberally, not specifically, when I don't like who I am and I start to judge myself for pleasing others, and then try to please others, and I judge them for not reciprocating, and they didn't even know they're part of the equation. It's a vicious cycle. The judge is the nasty. And then when we can get out of that, and when we can say something to the effect of, stop it. Just that brief pause, because you are. That's all. Thanks, Mitchell.
Stop it. There is a.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to hop off in a minute. But I've just been following the conversation. And there's a statement that comes to mind, which I think will summarize the position that I hold. And it's this: it's not your job to detox toxic people. It is your job to detox that part of you that resonates with their toxicity.
Ooh. Oh, wait. Oh, no. That's a mic drop. Say that again. That is so cool.
Okay. It is not your job to detox toxic people. It is your job to detox the part of you that resonates with their toxicity. And that post is also on my Instagram. I don't know how to transfer pictures onto Clubhouse. But what I wanted to say is that I've been listening to the conversation, and we're looking at the problem out there. But there's something in us that is resonating with such behaviors. And that's my interest, as you guys know, is emotions, having going through my own healing journey. When we resolve the emotions within us, it affects our emotional state. And therefore, the way we look at the world is different. Because there's no good or bad emotions, they are just this. And the interpretation we give to us based on the memory circuits in our brain is what is causing the judgment, etc. So when we look within us and recognize what emotions are causing this emotional state, the way we're looking at the world, then that's step one in the right direction. I'm so sorry, I love this discussion, but I have to hop off. And I thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Glad you could be here.
Thanks for being here, Bella. Really, really appreciate it.
Gina, you're on. Oh, and Dr. Laura has to go. So let's wrap up shortly. Gina, we hadn't said hello. Do you want to come in and say hello? And maybe before you do it, let me just set the room. We are in the Credibly Nation Clubhouse. This is the room focused on leaders living their values and growing their influence. It's always a safe environment. We're live on Clubhouse. We are also streaming to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And we'll hit the last 10, 15 minutes, just sort of wrapping up where people are. But I haven't heard from Jeannie yet, so I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, thank you. So I've been listening and I love this topic. So I was thinking about and I'm practicing some self-care right now. I'm getting my nails done, so don't mind my background.
Okay.
But when it comes down to leadership, I had for me, it's I just lost it. When it comes down to boundaries and I do not work harder than other people are willing to work for themselves. So I had a recent experience where I have a team of 20 that I supervise, and they call me their life coach. They just, sometimes I love them, sometimes they drive me bananas, but I was granted a lead case manager position. So when I was interviewing, and I was, for me, it's it was very important to, promote somebody within, because if I've had somebody on my team, I've had some of these people for 7 years, if I had to look out of my team for a lead case manager, I think that would be impacting how my leadership ability needed definitely some work. So it was funny because during my interview with her, And one of the questions was, well, what do you do when you have somebody who's not up to standard? Like, how do you deal with that? How do you, and so her response to me was, well, that's not an option. I will work with them until they are meeting the standards. And so I just kind of smirked. And so I was like, okay, I remember being there. And so we're like 1 month in, and she actually came to me the other day. So she said, so I was thinking about that question that you had asked me during my interview. And she goes, man, like, okay, so I'm not going to be able to keep on working with, what do I do? I've gotten to this point where, like, I think I understand why you had that smirk. Just some people aren't going to hit that standard. And so what do we do with them at that point? Because what happens is if we just keep on going, then we're burning ourselves a bridge. And, like, those people are just kind of just chilling, living their life. And so I thought it was so funny, like, having that conversation with her, that I was like, yeah. So, but that's just me. I just wanted to share that really quick.
Gina, thank you. Hey, so let's do I like the wrap up. We still have a good following and on LinkedIn. Thank you, by the way, LinkedIn audience. Thank you so much for joining us and participating. I so appreciate you being there and sharing comments. Victor, if I wouldn't mind, I'd love to do everyone do just a quick hello and wrap up, and then we'll call it a day. Any incremental thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, I arrive at the middle of the room, but what I'm taking is the importance of that aspect of our authenticity and integrity in our agreements. And the last participations that I really enjoyed related to try to be good enough with everyone, try to be in compliance with the requirements of others, sometimes may jeopardize our own personal well-being. And of course, we cannot agree to be and do whatever is needed for everyone. So we need to be very mindful. I think that in the end, this practice of self-awareness is critical. We need to be self-aware of our inner dialogue, self-aware of the agreements with our own self, self-aware of how we present ourselves in the world at every moment is totally critical. So thank you very much for the room. As always, Mitchell, very inspiring. Thank you everyone for being part of this group, and have an amazing, extraordinary day.
Oh, Victor, that was I can't find enough mic drop stuff to add, and that was really beautiful. And because we haven't really talked enough about, I mean, we've skirted the name, the phrase self-awareness, but we haven't really hit it. So thank you so much for that. Byron, what do you think? Do you want to give us a summary? I know you're you're in a pub. Is that what I heard you say?
No, I'm with the dogs on the couch. I moved to the office now, so
Okay.
it was just more of an R&R day for me, reflection with the dogs. But I enjoying this moment, Mitchell, because I just real quick. I think the idea here is to kind of the blind spots in life. Obviously, that's where awareness is the biggest advantage. And then the idea of the storytelling and being the engineer behind your own story. It brings the self into an avatar kind of mindset that you can play freely with. And in today's world, that kind of correlates to a lot of gamified or kind of, lightheartedness, at least to kindness. So there's some interesting things that come up in my world and how I work. But I think the best part about it is that I'm still doing the work with the integrity part of self, and mixing my day-to-day actions that produce income back into me so that I can then understand how to portray that, as I grow and as I move, through communities and environments and stuff. But I appreciate all of this, Mitchell. it sounds like it's a solution before problem mindset, and that's kind of where my club was oriented on human process development, was bring the solutions, not the problems. Let's talk solutions and expose the problems so we're not focused on them and kind of, you know, have the invert mindset of actually solving problems and stuff. But thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Nicole McCoy, thank you so much for hanging out in the audience and enjoying us today. Dr. Laura, I see you still here, but you're not on video. I don't know if you've left or not. If you're still here, it'd be great. Oh, good. You want to give a quick summary?
Retrain your brain so you can reset your mindset. It's a mind shift, peeps. It's not a mindset. And Adrian, you were dropping some bombs today. I'm so grateful that this room is on replay. Why? Because I can go back and I can listen to Adrian's radical, amazing, bad butt, I'm not going to say it, bad butt comment. Because I'm still thinking about it. And Byron, what you just said too, it's like boom, bang. And Gina, what a pleasure it is to have you on stage. Not like it's my stage, but to share stage with you and to continue to learn from you. I consistently see you in rooms. I know that you're there. And actually, I learned a little bit more about you today as opposed to just from you, which means a lot. Victor, always a pleasure. And I'm so grateful now that I recall how we met. And for that, who's the catalyst? Mitchell and Lorena, pleasure to see you. Can we all just give some flowers? How about we get the whole stage with hearts for Mitchell? Yay! You got that. This is you. I'm taking a screenshot right now. Boom. Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you.
That's awesome. Gina, did you want to do Gina, then Adrian, then Mitchell?
I am just glad that I was able to join in for a little bit today. I always love these groups when I'm able to come in. So just thank you for continuing to hold the group. Oh,
you are absolutely welcome. Thanks. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Laura and Adrian, I so appreciate your love and respect. And Adrian, I'd love to hear from you and give us a final super cool mic dropping moment. Oh wait, is that too much expectation?
I got it. I got the best. Okay. Dr. Laura, thank you so much for enjoying my bombs. What bothers me at nighttime is my husband hates my gas bombs. Anyone get my joke?
Yeah, I got you.
I love that.
But you know what? Honestly, I love this conversation. I do question, so I'd love to have a room for checklists for in the future regarding, can everyone actually be self-aware? Because growing up, I always thought that, like you, I had many arguments like, don't you at nighttime? I remember being a kid, so I sounded like a kid. Don't you at nighttime go back and reflect on everything you do during the day and kind of like think about things and see what you could do better or what you should have done worse, like whatever it may be. And it was like, no, we don't do that. So I really, growing up, I'm like, maybe not everyone does understand how to be self-aware, how to really look at themselves or do all of that. So I'm just, I question that. So I always question, I have to learn that not everyone does the things that I may do. And I don't know, I don't think there's a right or wrong because it's kind of personal. But I know that Dr. Laura is really changing people. Mitchell, I go back to 5 years ago, meeting you and how we just kept our relationship, right? Like you had me in the AHA and a couple of interviews. But like, you know, it doesn't really, my mom used to say it takes work to have, you know, it costs money to have friends, Adrian. It takes work to have friends. And I don't know. I don't think it really does. I think that it comes natural that you just kind of like, you know, hang on to the people that have meant so much to you in your life. And that's my little gas bomb. I'm sorry.
Can I, Mitchell?
Go ahead, please.
Well, I don't know if anything about the rest of the month, but I think that's an excellent. I don't want to just talk about having a room on that. I think it might be very possible. And Mitchell, to what extent do you want to alert regarding? Because I think that would be an excellent topic for next weekend.
Yeah, so I will be for the month of October. I'll be in France, and so I'm not convinced that I will be around to actually run the shows because it depends on friends and family, and it's a recharge exercise. It's a pruning exercise. It's a strategic exercise. It's a really, truthfully, a family and love exercise. And so I've asked for those that are in the inner circle who would like to run rooms. I know, Dr. Laura, if we can connect afterwards, I want to make sure I could make you an administrator to the group. And if you're feeling like the concept and construct of credibility is worth having a room here, like we might want to try a room during the week. We might try. We don't have to always do it on Saturdays, but I may not be around for a month, so I just thought I thought it'd be. And by the way, Laura, thank you for reminding me to do this. So let's just make sure we connect so I can make sure I make you an administrator of the group as well. If anyone's interested, either reach out to me or reach out to Dr. Laura, and happy to have you to run a room inside Credibility Nation. I'm honored with today, and for those who showed up and stayed, and the conversations, and I still have to tell you, I'm really loving those people who, by the way, since it was mostly me, I like having Dr. Laura around because her facial expressions are always great. But those who actually watched me 100% on video today, thank you for bearing with me. It's always fun to do. I'm gonna stop the share on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Then I'll wrap up here in Clubhouse. But hey, thanks so much. Have a phenomenal October, everyone. Be true to yourself. Be self-aware. Be credible. Live the person that you know you need to be. And as you're showing that and sharing that with others, they're going to see you that way. You will influence them in a positive way, and that will make life a little bit better. And the more you do it, the more times you do it, the more people you do it with, it'll continue to make life even a little bit more better. Anyhow, thanks so much for everyone for joining us. I'm going to stop the video